Good morning, Franklin Township. This is Bill Bowman from the Franklin Reporter and Advocate.
And this is PJ Parker, also from the Franklin Reporter and Advocate. Good morning, Franklin.
It's been a minute since we've had a news hour, so we're very happy that this one will be joined in a couple seconds by Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, who's going to bring us up to date on things that have been going on down in Capitol Hill. There's actually a lot, as you know, if you've been paying attention, that's been going on down on Capitol Hill. And we're anxious to get her take on that. So I think without any further ado, PJ, you can bring her in.
Yes. Introducing the renowned
Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman.
The
Welcome.
highly regarded, certainly in Franklin Township, Ms. Bonnie Watson Coleman. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Franklin.
Well, thank you for agreeing to come on again. You're probably the most, what's the word I'm looking for? The guest with the most appearances on our news hour. That's what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't think of the word.
I thought you were going to say the oldest.
No, I don't think so.
No, Bill's the oldest.
I think I'm the oldest.
Well,
all right. Well, as we talked about, we want to get up to date on a bunch of things that are going on. PJ, why don't you start it off?
There are just so many questions and so many issues at this point. I'm not quite sure which is the most significant, but I think the Inflation Reduction Act, as it impacts New Jersey specifically, your thoughts on that, and just if you can elucidate the impact that it has on New Jersey a little specifically.
So you're absolutely right, PJ. There's a lot that's been happening, and it's a lot of good stuff that's been happening out of the Congress and out of the White House. And the Inflation Reduction Act is one of the biggest. First of all, there's the biggest commitment investment in climate that we've ever experienced in this country. There is a concerted effort to bring costs down for everyday people, whether or not it's your insulin, it's going to be capped at 35, whether or not it is extending healthcare to those who weren't able to, who need the supplements in order to get it. If it's just having Medicare negotiate the cost of the prescriptions that people have to take every day, and particularly seniors. It's going to result in savings for people living in New Jersey and all over the country. And it's also going to provide access to healthcare through the subsidies and the extension of Medicaid. And it is designed to help this country return to an economy that works for everyone. It is designed to have government work for those who need it. Between this bill and the student debt reduction, EO, and the gun safety bill and CHIPS and the Competes bill, we've been really moving along in a very positive manner, putting people before politics, taking some really tough positions. Unfortunately, we've had to take those positions as Democrats because Republicans in Congress, both houses, have been reluctant, if not just damn defiant, in supporting any of those efforts. But in the last several months, we have seen a remarkable awakening on the part of our constituents across this country who recognize a couple of important things, PJ, if you don't mind my going on.
No, absolutely. We want to hear this.
Yeah. Number one is there's this, we've been saying this for a while, that what Republicans are doing and those who are following the former president and sort of his continuous fomenting of violence, people are recognizing that our democracy, our governance, the way we govern, the way we respect one another, although flawed, is definitely in jeopardy. And that democracy as we know it, and as we want to improve it, but protect what we have, is on the ballot. We also know that people are recognizing that with Joe Biden being in the presidency and Democrats being in control of both houses. Although, sometimes it doesn't work for us the way we'd like for it to work in the Senate. We're working on that issue. Important bills have been passed. The first gun safety bill has been passed over the last several months, in decades. The Competes bill, which is going to put us in position, make it here, make us stronger here, build it here, create jobs here. The climate investment in our Inflationary Reduction Act is about good jobs and building back our infrastructure to ensure that we are resilient and we are strong and we are working and we are addressing the needs of everyday people. But there's nothing bigger than dealing with having Medicare negotiate our prescription costs and putting a cap on the purchase of insulin. Mm-hmm. Diabetes is just so common in our country that we will save thousands of dollars a year. Mm-hmm. Patients, users will save thousands of dollars a year. They'll save capping your prescriptions at $2,000 a year for seniors is a huge undertaking. So I think that we're in a period right now, very interesting period. Got some negative stuff going on that's outside of our lawmaking, but the positive things are being communicated. The effort, the fight for everyday families, for senior citizens, for children, for those people who are carrying exorbitant school debt. We're working on those things. We're trying very hard to get where we need to get for this whole country. And people are finally seeing it. And so it gives me a great encouragement that people will do what they have to do in November. They will go to the ballot and they will vote in their best interest.
Mm-hmm. On that student debt reduction bill, some folks on the left are saying that it didn't go far enough. What do you think about that?
Well, I certainly would have liked to have seen more done, but this is a huge first step. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's $20,000 for any student carrying debt who was eligible for Pell Grants. Who is that? That's the lowest income families. Those are the students that weren't able to get the gifts from their family in order to go to school and had to rely upon debts in order to do that. The $10,000 for those otherwise whose family income reaches a certain threshold or doesn't go above a certain threshold is a beginning. It is help. You can't tell me that $20,000 and $10,000 is not a helpful movement in the right direction. And also just capping the rate of student obligation to pay back as a percentage of their income. It recognizes what student debt has done. Now, having said that, we got to make sure that college, higher education in general is more affordable. And we've done a lot of that. We put a lot of money into higher education, a lot of money into the HBCUs, recognizing that they were struggling, particularly during the pandemic. And so from the American Rescue Act to today, we've been investing in our schools, in our infrastructures, in our families, in our children, in our mothers, in our women. And that's what people need us to do. They need us to put their needs, their desires, their hopefulness over our politics. And we've succeeded in doing it. Hasn't always been easy, but we've succeeded in doing it on a lot of levels.
As I recall, one of the main issues with folks with the student loans was the exorbitant interest rate, where you could have somebody paying off the loan and actually having paid an equivalent amount of their loan, but still owing a lot more money because of the interest rate. Does this bill,
Yeah.
does that bill address that at all?
It doesn't specifically, but we know that that is an issue that we have to address.
Yeah.
Whip Clyburn and I have talked about this a few times about the whole interest rates that are charged. You know, higher education is an investment in our economy.
Yeah.
It is not an opportunity for usury to take place.
Right.
Because
Right.
the longer that these students who got their education have to pay their student loans and more debt they have hanging over them, the less they're able to contribute to society, to the economy in our society. And the impact that it has had on their credit rating. That is wrong.
Right.
And so we have a lot of work to do, but in the interim, we've moved in a direction that no one else has.
Right. Now, you mentioned the
So
Pell
there's
Grant.
another- yeah. There's
That's
another, can I
Go, I'm
just say,
sorry.
Okay,
there's
Bonnie,
a lot
go.
going on here. You know,
Yeah.
there is a program where if you if you were educated, you got student loans, and then you worked in the public sector or the nonprofit sector,
Mhm.
that there would be forgiveness.
Right.
Year for year after a certain period of time. Two things I want to tell you. I was told by someone very knowledgeable that during the Trump administration, over 29,000 people applied for that, and only 200 and some got it.
Wow.
Wow.
Which will tell you just how much they didn't care about everyday people struggling and getting educated and working in spaces that are all about helping us, whether it's education, medicine, or whatever. But
Mhm.
hey, Joe Biden recognized that. And so we will have up until October 31st. And I want everyone to hear this, who is eligible for this money, to go to the Department of Higher Ed in the U.S. Department of Ed and fill out the application. You have until October 31st. Now we're praying that we can get it extended until December the 31st. But
Mhm.
this is very important to all of our communities. Every one of our communities, including that beautiful Franklin community, has students who are eligible for reimbursement to their or forgiveness of their school debt because they've chosen to work in on a platform or in a field that is eligible. So please.
Can you talk about just a couple of the eligible categories, employment categories?
Yeah. Well, I think it's all nonprofit stuff, but
Okay.
for sure education.
Okay.
And for sure certain areas of nonprofits, certain areas of government. Yes, so there's a wide range. People need to go onto the website and look it up. And there are a lot of people. If I tell you that 29,000 people applied, and a tenth of them
Mm.
were, or 1% of them, right, were
Yeah.
given,
Yeah.
were awarded this relief. If you've been denied before, don't be discouraged. Go back in there. If you were eligible then, you're eligible now.
That's good to know. And that's for all student debt, or is that just the Pell Grant people? That's
Student
all?
debt.
Okay. I real quick, when you mentioned the Pell Grant, you triggered a memory of mine. Back in 1982, I was a student senator at Rutgers University, and we took part in a nationwide lobbying effort. We all took buses down to Washington. The Pell Grant, Ronald Reagan was president then, and the Pell Grant program was in jeopardy. So we all, I guess there were thousands of college students that bussed down to Washington to lobby our individual representatives, to try and save the Pell Grant. I got to lobby Bill Bradley, which I thought was pretty exciting. It was like preaching to the choir, but it was still, for a 21-year-old kid, it was still pretty cool. Anyway, PJ.
But you know what? Even though you know that your member, your representative supports something, they need to be visited and called and contacted, because they need to be able to say, my constituents are
Right.
pushing me on this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, the Pell Grant's so vitally important. Also, the president has increased the amount of the Pell Grant. There was a time when the Pell Grant like represented a good chunk of the cost to go to college. Now it represents something like less than 20%. And so
College tuitions keep going up, and my gripe with Rutgers is the emphasis on athletics and the amount of money that they keep pouring into athletics, particularly football. And I didn't understand when it was just starting back then when I was there. I haven't understood it in the years and years. And then the Gannett, New Jersey group has done some really good investigative work on the expenses. I mean, just the last one they did like a week or two ago about the Uber bills for food that these guys have racked up. They're supposed to get X number of dollars a month, and they've some of them double, triple, and quadruple that in a day. And they'll have meals. They'll have meals brought in from out of state, from their favorite restaurants out of state, and it's all on the taxpayer's dime. And I don't understand. But anyway, PJ.
Speaking of the taxpayer's dime, and I want to go back again to the Inflation Reduction Act, and we seem to, within this act and the student loan program, we've addressed the higher tier of our demographic as well as our youth tier with the student loan. I am reminded of a recent social media meme that I saw, which simply said, "Oh, so you didn't have a college debt? You do now." Which is the perception. If it is true, or if it isn't true, can you please comment on the fact that the perception that isn't being talked about is how are we paying for all of this?
Oh, well, within the Inflationary Reduction Act, there is a tax obligation to the 1% of the corporations and the 1% of the super wealthy families in this country that don't pay taxes. So there are pay-fors in this in this bill that represent to whom much is given, much is required, particularly when you haven't been given anything. And
Where's
secondly,
Where's that justice?
Yeah, and secondly, we need to be mindful. Well, first of all, the polling says that the majority of the citizens of this country, or the people who've been surveyed or polled in this country, even if they don't have student loans today, they support this because they recognize the investment it has in the economy. If a former student doesn't have to pay $500 or $600 a month in their student loans, they could be buying things like houses and cars and goods and services, all those things that help our economy to grow. So we have to be aware of those sort of negative messaging. And I think you're going to see a lot of negative messaging because Republicans don't have nothing positive to run on. They haven't helped with the Reduction Act. They haven't helped with the Rescue Act. They barely helped with the Gun Safety Act. They didn't help with CHIPS. They didn't help with our attempt to codify Roe v. Wade in the House. So if you don't have anything that you did that was helpful, then you try to tear down that which was advanced that could be perceived and would be of true helpfulness on your kitchen table, in your home, keeping shelter over your head and food on your table, and having access to medication that you need and the healthcare that you need.
So, so the higher tier income level is going to bear the brunt of these costs?
Those people, there's no one or family making $400,000 or less that is touched by this bill. The corporations which are touched by this bill have been the beneficiaries of the people who've been educated and work for them and help them to make the billions that they make, even help them probably to figure out ways not to pay their fair share of tax. So the general public, no, is not obligated here. And you know what? What were they saying when Trump gave that enormous tax break to the very wealthy and to the corporations. What were they saying when Betsy DeVos took education money away from public education and institutions and put it into private and other alternative schools? What were they saying when the oil companies and other folks were getting a break here, a break there? They weren't saying anything then. So listen for the garbage that it is. And there are media outlets like you all who get to answer those questions. People listen to you, people read, people see, people know.
Yeah,
Well, they
yeah.
do that because we have voices like yours to talk about what the real deal is.
Bring up the issues.
And we're going to be spending a lot of time doing town hall meetings and small group meetings because we want people to really understand what we've accomplished over the last 2 years, what that means to them, and how they can look it up and verify it for themselves.
Will you be holding a town hall meeting here in Franklin?
Probably. I'm going to be I've been in Franklin, twice last week. I'm going to be in Franklin
yes.
again. Yeah.
Yes, you're almost a resident.
It's
going to start sending you a tax bill.
It's beautiful up there.
Oh, we love it.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but we would love for you to perhaps have a Bonnie Watson Coleman legislative update on the Franklin Reporter News Hour, maybe once a month. And that will keep your constituency informed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, PJ, we could do that. Yeah.
Good, I think that would be wonderful.
That'd be great. I want to just circle back on something you mentioned about buying, helping people to buy houses. I'm sure you know that at least for affordable housing, and affordable housing doesn't mean what affordable housing meant 20 or 30 years ago. Affordable housing now means just the range of people who are eligible or should be eligible for affordable housing has really grown. But we have situations where we have these corporations, these LLCs and whatnot, who are coming in with cash falling out of their pockets. When someone is selling a house on the street, they're coming in, making cash offers above the asking price, and getting the house, and then turning it into an Airbnb or something, or a rental, and they're easing out folks who maybe are first-time home buyers or anything because they don't have the cash, they can't match this, these exorbitant, over the asking prices, and we're losing housing stock, and we're losing places for people to rent, to buy rather, and to rent, because now all we're seeing being built now are these luxury apartment buildings, and the rents are ridiculous. You've got to come up with some. I've seen some of them. You'd have to come up with $10,000 just to walk in the door. And that's not counting what it would cost you, an extra, if even, the rentals are having bidding wars now. So the rents that are being asked are being inflated. Is there anything federally that can be done to, you can't stop people from buying and selling, but at least to make it uncomfortable for these corporations to come in and just sop up the housing market and leaving working people out in the street, literally.
That is wrong. I understand that is wrong. I'm glad Marcia Fudge is the head of HUD. She is very much engaged in this issue and engaged in making sure that there is money for the creation and the restoration, the rehabilitation of affordable housing. And I agree with you that is a bigger range of housing needs than we've ever seen before. Because when I was working when I was in the legislature, in the state legislature, affordable housing meant one thing. Affordable housing is just it's just being able to live where you work, live where you have lived. And I know that this is an issue that we have task forces looking at. I can't report on anything to you right now, but I can tell you that you're not the first person to say this to us.
Good. I'm glad that.
And I will follow up so that we can have something to talk about the next
That's
time we
great.
get together.
Excellent. You know, and just as an add-on, there is an apartment complex, or rather a company that makes apartment buildings, and they tag their affordable housing element to, you know, what affordable housing is in each individual region. So, and this happens to be, I think, in Bedminster. So the rents are a lot more expensive than they would be, say, if this place was being built in Plainfield, right, where the levels are different. And my argument to them was, there is such a scarcity of affordable housing in the state right now that people who maybe would normally live in Plainfield are looking and saying, oh, geez, maybe I can get a house here in Bedminster, but the rents are much more, it's the same house, it's the same building. And I'm wondering, I guess this is more of a state issue than a federal issue, but it just seems to me that they need to think out of the box now. They need to stop relying on these regional affordable housing ranges and create a statewide range and say, okay, this is what we consider to be the income threshold for affordable housing throughout the state, regardless if it's in a posh town or if it's in, you know, an urban area. It should be the same, because people are moving around. People are just trying to find a place to live, and it's just getting harder and harder. So that's my soapbox. PJ.
I hear
Yes,
you.
two more soapboxes. I hope we have time to touch
Sure.
on two really, really important issues. The gun safety bill that you were talking about, and of course, the repeal of Roe v. Wade. And I'd like for you to comment first on the gun issue, because above all, if we are not safe, it doesn't matter where we live.
So I tell you that I am pleased that we passed a gun safety bill, even though I think that there's so much more that needs to be done. And I think that we need to not be caught up in linking mental health illness to gun issues.
I agree. It sounds like a really convenient excuse.
Exactly.
To skirt the laws that should be in place,
right,
prior to anyone having the ability to purchase a gun.
And so there are some, there's some extensions of the law to include the boyfriend girlfriend situation. I'm trying to remember all the things that were in the bill. I think that there was an age thing, particularly recognizing how the young guy, one of the young guys, was able to get a gun at the age of 18. Mm-hmm. For me, and there's an issue with regard to ammunition. For me, the issue is you should never be able to buy an assault weapon under any circumstances. None. You should never be able to buy a gun without full training, mm-hmm. transparency, and a vetting. And I know some of those issues have been addressed in this bill, which I might say it's historic that we got anything through. Yeah. But there's a lot more that has to be done. I just can't recall all the good things that we did in that bill, because we've been moving really fast. But I can come back and give you an update on all the specifics that I think move us in the right direction. But for me, when we get serious about gun safety, we'll make sure that no one has access to rapid firing assault type weapons. Mm-hmm. We will ban them again, not just for 21-year-olds or 18-year-olds or anybody else, but for everybody. You don't even need to kill an elk with one of those if you've got to kill the cute little elk.
Yeah.
Well, the hunting is a whole nother subject for me. But,
and I come from a family of hunters,
yeah,
we won't go there.
Yeah.
In New Jersey specifically, can you talk about any new regulations that have been put into place with gun safety? Too early?
No, not offhand. You know what?
I don't think there have been. I mean, we've got pretty strict gun laws in the state. I mean, you hear gun people complain about them all the time, that it's so hard to. Although now with that Supreme Court decision in New York, I guess it's questionable about whether or not we're going to have open carry, or at least concealed carry in the state. But I'm not really.
Yeah, and that's very dangerous. I think they're leaving it up to the states. I think New Jersey has been and continues to be a place that is takes you through more obligations and more transparency in getting a gun.
Yeah.
I'd hate to think that in a state that is congested in terms of the number of people in landmass, that you could carry a gun simply because you want to.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, one of the reasons that I support the expansion of the Supreme Court is because what we're seeing is a culmination of all the work that's been done by the ultra conservatives to get the people on the Supreme Court right now that behold these sort of right-wing ultra conservative ideologies. And so we're going to be about losing rights as these cases come before the courts, like we did with Roe v. Wade, like we will with marriage equality if we don't step in, like we will with the whole issue of guns. I mean, the thought that you could carry a gun anytime you want in the state of New York, in Manhattan, you know.
Well, in defense of that, I'm not a gun owner, but I know several who are. I think the Second Amendment has its place, and we do have the right to protect ourselves. And I think because there is so much out there that we appear to have to protect ourselves, I'm not sure that I'm not on the side of being able to carry a weapon. But if I'm carrying a weapon, I'm going to be educated about its use. I'm going to be educated about its the impropriety of how and when. I'm going to make sure that I know that I'm safely handling a lethal weapon. And I think that is sorely missing. You do have kids who are able to cross state lines and walk into a store in an adjacent state and just buy a gun.
And we should stop
and
that.
I think we aren't stopping it.
Yeah.
There is an issue. And it's, yes, I think one of tragedy, such as Uvalde and so many other mass school shootings occur. Is there a mental illness ascribed to that? Well, to a degree, of course, that's a logical conclusion. Why would one do that is an overriding question. So, but to foist it off as being a mental health issue, there are just people who are evil. And
that's right.
Well,
and that is beyond any scope of a mental diagnosis of pathology. Oh, please! I'm starting to go on a tangent.
It's like what Springsteen said. I guess there's just a meanness in this world.
I think I need to just share with you, PJ, that I prefer a society where no one has to carry a gun. I remember being envious of Great Britain when I realized that even their law enforcement didn't carry a gun. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that the Second Amendment ever intended for people to carry guns to be able to shoot at will, nor do I think that it was intended to provide access to rapid shooting assault weapons. I mean, I think we were talking about muskets and militia then.
Mm-hmm.
We have, militia. Muskets and militia. There were muskets, but there was militia. Mm-hmm. We have police forces. We have military forces, and we have National Guards.
Modern day militia.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, that was at a time when Americans at that time got a real rash when they thought about a standing army because of their experience with the British Army, how the British Army would just come in and, bivouac in their houses at will, and there's nothing you could do about it. So there was a real hesitancy about establishing a standing army. So they were relying on militias. And of course, it says right there, a well-regulated militia being necessary for blah, blah, blah. People forget about that part, but we don't need to linger on that. Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade. You took some action about that.
Yeah, I participated in a demonstration and I put this in quotes, arrested for that effort because they really inconvenienced us more than arrested us. It just made me much more respectful, even though I'm in awe of the John Lewises and all the folks back in the day. what they had to experience. But the House of Representatives codified a woman's access to abortion, woman's right to autonomy over her body, a woman's right to have access of any kind of health care that she just determines is important. The Senate has not taken the bill up. I think it's important for there to be more Democratic senators,
Mhm.
the House to be maintained in the majority. I think we need to codify that. I don't think that that's the only thing that's on the line. This whole issue of, what is conception? What is the what is the space that contraception holds in this space? How is that interpreted by this very ultra conservative right wing wingnut Supreme Court? What about in vitro fertilization, and what do you do with eggs? All that kind of stuff is
Mhm.
on the line. And the other thing that's on the line, besides being Black in America is always on the line, is what about gay marriage?
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's on the line. Clarence Thomas even uttered those words that we ought to be looking at some of the other standing rights that people have
Mhm.
that have been interpreted over the years, but not necessarily codified. Well, he didn't
Mhm.
talk about his own situation, which was interracial
Exactly.
marriage, but
Right.
Exactly.
nonetheless, I think that we're at a point where we need to codify as many of these rights that we thought we had solidly
Mhm.
held over the decades, because we have been awakened to a serious threat and the culmination of a very strategic effort on the part of the ultra right wing conservative nuts.
Okay. Speaking of threats to democracy, and I know we're running out of our time with you. Mar-a-Lago, the situation there, the DOJ did a 36-page document dump last night. I think it was around 10:30, in response to the Trump team's request for a special master. They found hundreds of documents, some of them highly classified. It turns out in his desk drawers in some places. What are your thoughts about all that?
That any information in the hands of Donald Trump was there for monetization
Mhm.
or for vengeance, and that it is always dangerous to have that. And the fact that he had these documents, that in and of itself is an illegal act, and he needs to pay the consequences. I think
Mhm.
it's important that the consequences are appropriately severe, because we need to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Hey guys, I'm
You gotta
I'm
go.
I'm late for another.
Okay, well, we appreciate you taking the time. I really do. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yes,
you.
well,
Congresswoman
And we're
Watson
going to
Coleman.
look forward to inviting you back on a monthly basis where we have some time to explore individual issues in more depth.
hey, and
Exactly.
PJ, I want you to know what I want you to do. I want you to communicate with staff the particular
Yes.
issues that you're interested in, so I can drill down into the substance
Perfect.
of all of
Okay,
them,
that's great. Yeah.
because things have been moving so rapidly. Like,
Right.
I'm good with the top lines.
Okay. I
Yes.
know you are. I know.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
I
But
want to be
so that
able
we can flesh it out.
I want to be able to share with people what that means in their home and in their
Exactly.
community and at
Okay.
their table. All right.
Good
Okay,
enough.
that's
All
great.
right.
And we appreciate it. We know we had to skim over so much, but we so appreciate you always giving us your time, because you're so rapidly becoming a voice and a face that people trust. And that is so incredibly important to all of us. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much, Bonnie Watson Coleman. Thank you.
Thank you, PJ.
Thank
I
you.
pray so. I'm so glad to represent that part of New Jersey. It's
Hmm.
beautiful, and every time I go there, everyone is very kind and encouraging to me. So
Yeah.
that's my blessing. It's good to see you both.
Excellent. Good to see
Okay.
you.
Thank
Connie
you,
Watson
Bonnie.
Coleman. Thank you very much. All right. Just
Hmm.
shuffle the chairs here a little bit.
Just the whirlwind of I feel almost like we shotgunned her a little bit, and to just get a few topics discussed. But I think it would be wonderful to have her back on a regular basis where she can go in more depth about individual situations that are pertinent to New Jersey.
Yep, absolutely. Anyway, wow. So that was good. So that was an interesting take on what's going on down in Washington. And like you said, yeah, we do need to have her in more often. And it'd be nice if we could get one of our senators as well to talk about what's going on. Maybe Cory Booker. He's been in Franklin a lot over the years.
That would be really appropriate.
I think he'd be more amenable than Menendez would. But it'd be good to have folks.
Well, it'd be good to approach them both and hear the voices of both. That would be great.
Yeah.
So I wanted homework to do then.
Yes, we do. I wanted to give Franklin a little update on the tragedy that occurred yesterday, where a toddler apparently died after being left in a car. The prosecutor's office came out with another press release with some more information. Apparently, the initial call was made by a neighbor who was a firefighter, who I think that was told to us by the neighbor who spoke to us and other broadcast TV news people yesterday. Called it in on a fire radio. She was giving the child CPR when police arrived. Police also assisted with the CPR until EMS people from nearby hospital arrived, but it was too late. And unfortunately, the child died. There's an autopsy scheduled, and they don't know how long the child was in the car, but they're investigating to determine the length of time the child was in the car. And it's just overall a heartbreaking and just tragic situation. So.
Well, it's we've experienced higher than normal temperatures.
Yeah.
And I know when I travel with my dogs in the car that the air conditioning is on full blast. If I have to stop, I have a second set of keys and I keep the engine running. I'm not gone for more than maybe a minute or two. The engine stays on, the air conditioning stays on. I put a note on the car that the air conditioning is on and I will be back in a minute. I'm conscious of the fact that they're in there. I can't fathom, and this is not to be judgmental because we don't know the circumstances. I can't fathom not knowing that they're there.
Yeah, it's terrible. So we don't know what happened.
We don't know what happened.
And of course, you're in and out of the car. You're in and out of the car quickly because we don't want to run afoul of the state's anti-idling ordinance.
Well, that as well. But thank you for the reminder, Mr. Bowman. But the point being is that you have to be mindful. You just have to be mindful.
Yeah, it's terrible. All right, then.
Of course,
I think
our prayers are with the family.
Absolutely.
The horror of this whole incident is welded into their beings forever.
Yeah.
So anyway,
okay.
We are the Franklin Reporter and Advocate, and happy to say that we just celebrated anniversary number 9. Hardly can believe that. 9 years, Franklin, that we're here, during which we have brought you the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour, such as you saw today. And we have our daily email blast, which you can sign up for at no charge on the front page of franklinreporter.com. And every morning around 5 a.m. in your inbox will be the day's top stories, will be the day's best fuel prices, and the traffic report. So it's to your best interest to be part of our morning report audience, and as well as our monthly digest, which is our newsprint vehicle, as it says, monthly, with a recap of the months prior. Well, actually, we're coming out now the 3rd to 4th week of the month to encapsulate as much of that month's news as we can. So look for it. It's in all the supermarkets and the fast food chains. And if you want to hold it in your particular place of business, we're happy to drop off copies for you as well. We're in now well over 30 locations. And if you don't find it, keep looking, because we're not stopping as to where they're going to be. Where else are we? We're on YouTube. We're digital, of course, our 24/7 news site, franklinreporter.com. What you need to know about Franklin. And we do archive, if I'm not mistaken, right back to day one. That if there's something that happened in 2013 during August, the week of August 29th, you can still read about it.
Yep.
In the Franklin Reporter. And we do not charge you for that.
I think there are more than 7,000 articles in the archive right now.
Mm-hmm. So you want a brief history within the context of the Franklin Reporter and Franklin Township since 2013. Again, franklinreporter.com.
And that's interesting you should say the history thing, because that's really one of the roles of a community newspaper, community news organization, is to be an historical record. And unfortunately, a lot of the corporate news organizations don't honor that anymore. And all they care about is, the big stories, the big issue stories, getting the Pulitzer Prizes and all this other stuff. And they're letting go of the stuff like what happened at the Township Council, or there's a big controversy over a proposed warehouse in town, and local residents are getting organized about it, and you don't see that. You don't see that except once in a while they'll helicopter somebody in and write a story and then go away for a while. Mm-hmm. But one of our roles is to serve as an historical record, so that's why you see me write stuff about, contracts, buying a new truck, or council buys a truck, and or they're paving these roads or whatever. I mean, it's in 10 years, hopefully the site's still up. Someone's going to want to know, and they're going to be able to go back and look. So we're also, speaking of social media, we are on Twitter. We are also obviously on Facebook, because that's where you're watching this now, either that or YouTube. And we are on the Insta. It didn't come up. There we go. We are on the Insta as well. And we're also kind of on TikTok. I've been saying this for months now. I still don't. Yeah, PJ's not a TikToker, although you really ought to be for your music. But
well, that's another conversation.
Hey, listen, there are some incredibly, it started out as a thing for kids, and it's sort of morphed into this thing for dancers.
Oh,
and now the adults have
dancing. Yes.
Now the adults have taken over, and but there are some incredibly funny people on TikTok. Mm-hmm. They are hilarious, and there are some interesting political takes, and there are some interesting recipes if you're into cooking. And every now and then you get the occasional, nonsense, but you can just, swipe right on by. But so we're on TikTok. I haven't come up with a way to make it interesting or engaging. Anyway, that's where we are. If you have a news tip or a complaint or praise, you can email me at editor@franklinreporter.com. The lights stay on two ways at the Franklin Reporter family of publications, through subscriptions to our online news site, which is only $37 a year. That's the best deal you're ever going to get. 10 cents a day. It's the best deal you're ever going to get for anything. The other way we keep the lights on is through advertising, and we advertise both. We advertise on the franklinreporter.com site, on the Morning Report email, and also in our monthly digest newspaper. And to talk about that, you should email ads@franklinreporter.com, and PJ Parker will help you out with that.
Well, I think the big picture about advertising, yes, of course, it's supportive to us, absolutely. But the fact is, people want to read the news of their community, whether they're reading it digitally, whether they're reading it in a daily email report, or whether they're actually turning a page, which is starting to become really much more desirable. Not everyone wants to swipe all day long. Sometimes it's really satisfying to turn a real page. But the fact is, your news is archived in this manner. And people are following the news and reading the stories and seeing the pictures of their friends, their families, their children. Sadly, but importantly, we also have added our life stories section to the monthly digest, where there is an opportunity to to learn about some of your neighbors who you may not have known had passed on, and whose families you would want to extend your condolences to. That's become a very popular place as well, and we've now incorporated it into the monthly digest. As we grow, there will be other features added to it to just continue our growth for that as your hometown newspaper, as well as your hometown company of publications, bringing you the news in so many different ways. But the bottom line is, and as an advertising person, this has been a long-standing debate between Mr. Bowman and myself. This is a news-driven organization, and it is one that, if you are a citizen of Franklin Township, you do not want to miss what's in the Franklin Reporter and Advocate.
That's right. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up. We had a nice, informative chat with Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman. We can thank her for showing up and agreeing to come. And she's, like I said, I think she's the most frequent. That's the word I was looking for. Frequent.
Yes.
She's the most frequent guest we've had on the program. And as that's, we need to know what's going on in Washington, because it affects us. We need to know what's going on in Trenton too. And I hopefully we can have Joe Danielson, Assemblyman Joe Danielson, on more often as well to talk about stuff that he's doing in Trenton and just things that are going on in Trenton, just so we have an idea of what our legislators and maybe even Commissioner Director Chanel Robinson from Somerset County Board of Commissioners to talk about what's happening, and let's extend it down to the Township Council.
Exactly.
Although we try to give you a pretty good report of what the council's up to on a weekly basis, but maybe the mayor could come on more often. We can talk about initiatives that are happening there, and even in the school board with maybe the superintendent or the board president. I mean, we just want to bring you as much as we can in different modes. And, we want to. The saying is, bring the news to where people want it. So, we have the online, we have the newspaper, we have the broadcast here with the live streams and with our news hour. And we're just trying to bring you the news wherever you guys are more comfortable receiving it.
And one important addendum to that, you are looking at the Franklin Reporter and Advocate. There's Bill Bowman, there's PJ Parker. There are a lot of people in Franklin Township. There are a lot of events for which we would love to be able to cover, if we are not already covering 12 things at that exact moment. And the only way we are going to know about many of them is if you, Franklin, give us that information. So please do not hesitate. You have franklinreporter.com. You can contact Bill with any printed material, editor at franklinreporter.com, or me, ads at franklinreporter.com, or P.O. Box 5811 and in Franklin Township, where you can send a press release or any other news information that you think is important for your community to be able to take part in on some level. We are frequently at the last minute, oh, can you come and cover this? And it's 10 minutes before the event. We're on a tight schedule because there is so much going on that we do want to bring to you. And we do want your organization to benefit from the additional publicity. So please, please take this to heart. If it's happening and you want us to be able to cover it, please let us know. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. You become our reporters in the field.
Yes, our tipsters.
We appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Franklin, thank you again for tuning in live or watching the archive version of this latest news hour. And I forgot to say today was August 31st, 2022. Goodbye, August. August is the best month of the year, I think.
Well, it's the only one that doesn't have a holiday, except for the birthday of the editor of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate.
Exactly. And I celebrate. Well, I don't celebrate all month anymore, but yeah, it's nice to know it's my month. All right, Franklin. So where was I? Oh, yes, as usual, Franklin. Until we meet again, Franklin. Stay safe. Slava Ukraini. PJ, say that thing that you say.
This is PJ Parker from the Franklin Reporter and Advocate, and we will be back.